Welcome to this episode of Weather Eye. I'm meteorologist Ian Kowalski. I'm happy to have you here with me. This week, we are looking at the first start for the month of March. We're getting closer and closer to spring as we get into the middle of the month, and that means we are going to be approaching severe weather season. Not necessarily here in Colorado quite yet. Our picture as a whole for this episode, we're going to look back what happened this week in Colorado. A quieter week overall until little fires over the weekend, as well as weather incoming tonight as of recording this. And again, we are still recording this on, I just want to make sure I'm right, it's the 4th? It's 5th. Sometimes you miss. We're recording this on March 5th, and we are seeing some active weather tonight. And as we move into tomorrow, then as we move into the rest of our show, we're also going to start out discussing some severe weather ongoing towards the western portion of the United States. Not here in Colorado, I'll tell you that right now. Not too much severe weather, except for some winter storms going on in the mountains that we'll take a look at here in a little bit. So where's our starting point? Our starting point is over this previous weekend on Saturday. We're going to take a bit of a bigger picture look and then narrow it down first. Let's take a look at our watches and warnings. That's going to tell us the start of our story. What do all these colors mean? These are our National Weather Service watches and warnings. Right here in the light blue area, these are our winter weather advisories. It's where we're expecting snowfall in the mountains tonight, lasting through Friday the 6th in the middle of the day. You have these lighter pink areas here. These are your winter storm warnings. These were watches yesterday, upgraded to warnings. That's where your more intense snowfall is going to be. We'll talk about what that means for travel plans later on in the show. But what I want to focus on here to start out is this pink zone here over towards Pueblo and Colorado Springs. These are your red flag warnings. That's, I'm sure, something you're very familiar with if you've ever lived on the Front Range of Colorado. It's those strong gusts, and these warnings are issued when it's very easy to trigger a fire. What are the kind of things that contribute to that? Low moisture in the air and strong winds, those strong downslope winds coming off the Rockies. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them yourself if you've ever tried to drive, really, again, anywhere on the Front Range, especially this time of year. So what happened over the weekend? Well, the gusts actually have not been too strong. Even the next couple of days here, they're not going to be quite so extreme. Certainly, green is noticeable and at 30, almost 40 mile per hour range at times, periodically localized as we pick up into the next couple of days. But this doesn't look too much different than last weekend. So what happened? Fires broke out over towards the central portion of the mountains, and one place you definitely do not want to be is in the mountains when those fires break out. So we're going to take a look at a package from our friends in Denver about a fire that occurred on Saturday the 28th. Let's take a look at it.
Fire crews and helicopters dumping out water was certainly not the view that hikers were expecting at Chautauqua Park on Saturday, but officials say it is a good reminder for folks to be prepared before you get on the trail. Captured on video, Nick Wilkins shared his first-hand point of view when firefighters and park rangers rushed hikers off Chautauqua Park trails on Saturday as a 1.5-acre wildfire burned nearby.
It was definitely a little scary being on top of the mountain and seeing the fire down below and thinking ooh, it's kind of coming towards us.
Wilkins says he and his girlfriend were about 40 minutes into their hike up the Flatirons when they saw smoke and turned around, guided out by park rangers.
I think the hikers, when we were up on top of the mountain, was a little bit more frantic, but by the time we were pretty much down there, the state troopers and the park rangers and stuff, they were pretty calm.
Boulder Fire said it took hours to get hundreds of hikers off those trails, but reported everyone got down safely. The fire was quickly contained by crews, but it made hikers like Wilkins a little nervous, and he says next time he'll be more prepared with an escape route.
What's the best way to get down, and quickest way?
It's the exact advice safety officials with Boulder County are giving out, especially when there's high fire danger. Make sure you know your way down. Maybe take a paper map in case your phone dies. Bring water and have a face covering in case there's heavy smoke.
You want to be aware of the situation, so looking off in the distance every once in a while, is there a smoke plume? Is there something, ash falling from the sky? Those things will all be indicators that maybe there's something afoot.
Safety officials also say that if you see a fire or smoke, move away from it and call 911 immediately. Now, if you are on the phone with a dispatcher and they're able to track your GPS coordinates, they might also be able to help you get off that trail. In Boulder, Anna Kuhn, Fox 31.
All right, so there was your look. I'm sure many of you closer towards the Front Range heard about that for yourself. We talked about those red flag warnings in low moisture in the air. Getting caught on the trails certainly isn't great, but all of Colorado is really dry for the most part. Not necessarily because there's no moisture in the air. I just talked about the fact that we're going to see some rain and snow across Colorado even tonight. It's relative humidity. That's the important part to think about, is our temperatures are so much warmer than the dew points at the moment. In fact, it's all of this portion of the United States here, all towards the southwest, and you're seeing this incredibly dry air. It's something I want to point out here, because this is going to relate towards the rest of our forecast. It's down here towards Texas. We're going to take a look at national weather, and you'll notice a big gap between what's going on here towards the border between Oklahoma and Texas. Drier air down here, green. That's that moist air with higher relative humidity up towards Oklahoma. We're going to be talking about dry lines here in a moment. Why are we talking about all this? Well, there's a lot of pieces to put together in a forecast. We're going to take our look nationally here because the low pressure system moving off the coast is coming our direction, and then it's going to move towards the central portion of the U.S. where it's going to bring severe weather. So we'll look national and then bring it back here to Colorado. Let's talk about dry lines here for a moment. It's the difference between that green moisture air that we talked about up towards Oklahoma and further down south near Texas, where it's a lot drier. It moves right over that, that drier air. And much like a cold front or a warm front, the difference between how high those dew points are in air is also enough to stack different air masses on top of each other. So it's not just temperature, right? You hear all the time, cold front sweeping through western Colorado. That means we're going to see rain. That means we're going to see snow. And mechanically, it's really no different. It's just how moist that air is compared to the other instead of temperatures. So it's just a different form of comparison. And then here's it is right here, another visual here. Dry lines, wind direction changes along the front. Again, that's no different than really what you see in a cold front. A cold front moves through the air, you start to see those winds shift directions. And if it's a low pressure system, it shifts a few different directions, which means, you're going to see those mountains interact in a different way. But a dry line usually isn't very geography based. Typically, it's just going to be, again, dry and then moist air on one side or the other. And then you see ahead of that dry line, again, southerly face winds, just a typical general direction for what you're going to see. So let's get back to our SPC outlook. We've showed that a lot on this show. And you'll notice this is the dry area over towards Texas. And then up here, this is where you're expecting that severe weather. Like we talked about, we just showed you that visual. Wind rides up that drier air, bringing that moisture air up into the sky. And it's no different than normal front. It means that you're going to get those severe thunderstorms at times. And that's what they're expecting right now here towards the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. You do have this enhanced risk zone here. So what does that actually mean for our national weather look? Let's take a deeper dive right here. This is our upper level flow. Here's what's affecting us in Colorado. See this low down here? It's starting to form down towards Arizona and New Mexico, and it's moving over towards New Mexico. This cold front, that's what's going to bring us rain and snow as we move into the next couple of hours here. Yes, hours, as I'm recording this in the afternoon on the 5th. And that cold front moves through, and then it really starts to split off. That low that we were talking about earlier on that's bringing us active weather here in Colorado kind of starts to dissipate. And then this forms down here. It's going to continue to bring more rain and active weather down towards the western portions of Texas as you move into the weekend. And it splits further off, goes down towards Baja California. So let's take another look at that relative humidity. We talked about, again, visual for that dry line right here. It's one of those factors that's going to get that severe weather going. Because, again, you have that active lifting mechanism getting those storms all the way up into the air. And then that drier air, too, of course, to no surprise, bigger contrast right here. Much darker red, drier air, much deeper greens, more moist air. So you're seeing more severe storms, again, up towards this corner of the panhandle here because you have a bigger contrast between the two. So, again, here's one more reminder of that graphic. Kind of, again, this is more of a side angle than a vertical angle, kind of ramping up right here, and that's where you get those clouds. So again, hope that kind of helps explain that, but it's not the only factor, certainly. We talked about that humidity. Energy is a big part of that. Now, humidity and energy are not necessarily the same thing. We should do the relative humidity. That's just how much of that moisture is occupying the air relative to the temperature. Now, say you have, we'll say it's 30 degrees outside. And then you have a dew point of we'll say 29. You're going to have a high relative humidity. Those numbers are very close to each other. But that's not going to really mean much in terms of energy, especially over towards the west right now, where you have those 70-degree temperatures. Again, we were record-setting over the past couple of days, and those dew points are only the 20s or 30s. Not only do you need those two to be close to each other, but they both also have to be a bit higher. If you just have high temperatures or you just have high dew points, you're still not going to be able to squeeze all that energy out of the air. And so right here, that's a visual of it. It's where it's both warm and moist, and that's the south right now, and most of Texas and Oklahoma. Again, more set up for those storms coming over the next couple of days here. So we'll be taking another look at that here. I want to point out another factor, because we have multiple threats with those storms. Hail and tornadoes are also going to be possible. Again, we're getting close to spring and into severe weather season. Why are tornadoes possible? Well, it's not just that energy, but you also need wind shear. So firstly, I want to show where all these arrows are coming from. Coming up from the southwest. These are your upper level winds. These are, a few thousand feet up in the air. Right here, this area, that's where it's bringing that moisture in over from the Pacific. But then I wanted to add another layer. I hope you can see this well. This green area right here, this is that Pacific moisture. There's more than one layer of the atmosphere. You'll get this analogy all the time for meteorologists, but I'll give it again. The atmosphere, and specifically when it comes to making a tornado, it's like a cake. You need multiple different ingredients. You got to stack them on top of each other. These are your lower level winds coming over from the Gulf, bringing up that moisture over towards Texas, and then you have that upper level flow coming from a different direction. That's where you get wind shear. There's two different types of shear: directional, wind coming from, say, the southeast, and wind coming from the southwest, going against each other. That's good for lift, and that's good for getting that active weather going. Then, at the same time, there's speed shear. There's no surprise. You're always going to get some level of speed shear in the atmosphere. Winds get more intense once you get to those upper level jets. So there's your explanation of that, and that's kind of why we're seeing this set up for, again, a strong tornado risk in the same region we looked at, right along that dry line here, drier in Texas, moisture in Oklahoma, and right in that area right between. That's where you're getting the highest risk of tornadoes, and again, some potential for hail too. That's the red area right there. That's a very strong hail risk that we'll be taking a look at here in a little bit. We're taking a look at our satellite and radar right now. What's going on across the United States? A lot of severe weather warnings have been issued all along the East Coast. We talked about, again, kind of over towards the Pacific right now. It's going to be a more active region this time of year, but it's starting to get going a little bit down here towards Texas. It was a little bit earlier on. The dry line takes a while to get going. Sometimes you got to get into those nighttime hours when it starts to move. Again, the dry line moves as it fluctuates throughout the day because it's not as warm anymore. So that moisture kind of just travels generally with the cooling air. And then that's how you get situations like this, where you don't have too much active weather until we get into those overnight hours. But let's take a look here in western Colorado. What's coming towards us? This snow right here up towards Salt Lake City, heading our way. In fact, right now, as I'm recording, probably a little bit ongoing up towards Colorado National Monument, not too much. We're only seeing the start of it, but it's stalling out right here. We're so much warmer here in western Colorado than a lot of places over towards the west because of that cold front moving through the area. It's really starting to slow down a whole lot as it gets closer and closer towards us, and that arrival time will be coming in the next couple of hours as of recording. Right now, it is 4:01. I'd say we're about 3 hours out on the 5th right now. But you can tell me for yourself if that's ended up what's happening. But I'm confident in my forecast. So we're going to take a break from looking at national weather. Right now, we're actually going to talk a little bit more about the Front Range. I want to throw in a more fun package before we go towards our break. I like talking about space here. In fact, we saw a total lunar eclipse just a few days ago. It was beautiful. I should have thrown a picture in here to the show. Point is, though, it's really, really cool astronomical event. But Colorado is on the front edge of actually seeing some real innovation in space. So we're going to take a look to our friends over on the Front Range to see what kind of innovation is happening here and how Colorado is going to help us get back to the stars.
8, 7, 6, coming up on main engine start.
This was the monumental moment space history was made back in 1998. Blasting off from a dusty field in Kazakhstan was the first piece of the International Space Station.
Liftoff of the Proton rocket.
And now it's almost time to say so long to the ISS. By the end of this century, it's set to be replaced with commercial space stations, including Starlab.
but we who are working toward them know that most of the building blocks are already in place.
A state-of-the-art next-gen research center that's already been awarded $217 million from NASA and is led by the Colorado company Voyager Technologies and CEO Dylan Taylor.
There's all kinds of science fiction-y things that you can do in microgravity that just boggles the mind.
This includes improving monoclonal antibodies to fight disease, developing better drugs to battle cancer, and maybe one day sending stem cells to Star Lab to grow organs for people who need them.
So a lot of people don't realize gravity, microgravity, is sort of a magic laboratory. It really benefits life here on Earth.
But that's not all. Voyager is also working to keep America safe. The company, that's just 7 years old, has a $900 million contract from the Air Force.
There it is.
And recently broke ground to expand its American Defense Project in southern Colorado.
Part of it is peace through strength. When you think about the rise of China and continued national security focus on the United States and Russia, it's imperative that the United States maintains our advantage.
When this 150,000 square foot facility is finished later this year, it'll help design and test new missiles that could be part of the Golden Dome missile defense system and protect America from foreign air attacks. Voyager is also a part of the 21st century space race to go back to the moon and have people live and work there. In fact, Voyager believes that science fiction dream will become a reality in our lifetime. In Denver, I'm Matt Morrow.
I'm back once more. I hope you had a good time watching that package before the break. I thought it was a fun little look at what's happening here in Colorado because I'm a meteorologist. I like the weather, of course, but space weather still kind of my ballpark, so I like watching those kind of things for myself. But let's talk active weather here in Colorado. We're going to take another look at our watches and warnings. You saw this graphic earlier on in the show. We talked about it. These are your winter weather advisories. They're lasting through Friday night. And again, 6 p.m. That's about the time many of you will be getting off work. Then they slowly start to see that rain and snow calm down a bit. But what's really important to look at here is these winter storm warnings. Of course, if you're up on the Mesa, you're looking for, I think you really could realistically get near a foot of snow up towards the Grand Mesa and over here towards portions of the Elk Range, the Elkhead specifically. But really, the main threat that we're looking at here is up in this winter storm zone area. That is along I-70 up towards Vail Pass, and Eisenhower Tunnel is included because of 40-mile-per-hour gusts on top of the snowfall that's going to be ongoing Thursday night, tonight on the 5th, through Friday during the day. So, and again, some of you may have already seen the results of this for yourself, but at least as of recording, it's going to be pretty tough on the roads, even during the day tomorrow on Friday at times, in the high country specifically. So do keep that in mind. It's kind of one of those times where it's like, okay, you want to think, if I don't have to make this trip, you might not want to, because you're certainly going to see delayed traffic. I don't think there's any way around that as we move into the weekend. So let's look at it tonight. Again, I said our start time is around 3 hours from now. That's about 7 p.m. Again, we'll crossing my fingers, I nailed that one. But you move later on into the evening, you're seeing this rain still ongoing, and some snowfall over towards the divide. It moves further east the further you get into the night, and this is Friday morning. You're seeing it starting to get out of the valley a little bit, but that low is going to get pretty close to us, so we're going to see our wind direction shift a little bit as you move throughout the day. Still mostly coming from the north, but just enough of an angle change that you're going to see it interact with the mountains just a little bit different, and that's to get snow in some new places that hadn't seen it before. Here in the valleys, I do want you to point out, you haven't really seen too many temperatures below freezing. I think we're more on the rainy end for us here in the Grand Valley and even towards Delta. Certainly around the rim of Montrose, you're going to see some snowfall, but in the central portion of town, again, more expecting to be on the rainier end. Then it moves out of the area as you get towards Friday night. And then we're going to see a nice weekend. It's going to be great outside. We're going to be back into those 50s and returning to those 60s by the time you get to next week. Going to be plenty of sunshine to go around. I don't think you're going to have too many complaints if you had those outdoor plans once you get past Friday. Again, Fridays are a really big active weather day, not just here in Grand Junction, but really all along the central portion of the Divide, Paonia, Gunnison, Aspen. A little bit on the drier end over towards Moab and Nuclear, just 'cause kind of the angle of that rain and snow. But if you're heading south along 552 into the San Juan, it's going to be a very snowy couple of days here. So let's look at our futurecast regionally. We already talked about it coming over from here in Salt Lake City, then heading to the east, snow starts to pick up, and then we also see, like we talked about earlier on in the show, those thunderstorms starting to pick up over towards Oklahoma and Texas. Again, a nighttime event, like we talked about, much more possible with those dry lines. In fact, our model, it lines up really perfectly with that high relative humidity zone here in western Oklahoma and the dry zones over towards the Panhandle. But don't get too distracted. Let's talk about here in western Colorado. It's still ongoing throughout the night, and then it dips down over towards the northern portion of New Mexico, almost getting to Albuquerque. But a really snowfall-heavy event in the high country, but the valleys are just a little bit too warm, I'd say. And you look down here towards Pueblo and Denver. Again, you're seeing those areas that have consistently seen those near record-setting temperatures still on the rainy end, just barely holding on to that warmth. And then you get towards Friday night, by the time you're getting off work, I do say it's about done once you get near sundown, and then it's gone. Pretty dry weekend incoming here for the region. And not much to talk about. You're not even seeing clouds here on our futurecast. It's going to be very simple. If you want to get outside, you want to go on your hikes, you want to go see all the snow for yourself after it's, of course, already fallen from the sky. I think you got pretty good odds of that because you're not going to have too many active weather threats. So let's look nationally again. Like we talked about, once we move later on into the night, tonight on the 5th, that's when you start to see those thunderstorms pop up over in the Panhandle region and moving across Oklahoma and into Kansas too. And then still over towards our north. This is kind of the front end where that low is actually centered. You're still seeing some snow ongoing over towards Billings, moving into Rapid City, and then moving further east, kind of more into the Midwest. And then this system makes it all the way, check it out, going all the way up to Wisconsin and Michigan. That's how much strong moisture is going to be picked up by that guy right there. And then going further east, that snow, again, becomes a lot more snowy once you get out of the warm region here in the southwestern portion of the country. And then drying out as we get into the weekend. All of our severe thunderstorm threats are all over towards the east. We're missing out. We talked about that flow coming up from the Gulf. That's where all that moisture is going to be focused. We are really going to be missing out on it here in western Colorado. We're going to be moving back into an area of high pressure as we get into next week, the second full week of March. And that is going to make it, unfortunately, for me at least as a meteorologist, a little bit boring of a week more than likely is what we're looking at right now. And we're already getting to Monday. You're seeing not too much to talk about. So let's take a look at our time lapse of the week, seeing those clouds move over the western portion of the United States. Again, it was pretty sunny overall in that record-setting territory at times. We actually got, believe it or not, the third earliest we have ever seen a 70-degree high here in Grand Junction earlier on this week. We broke a record, getting up to 71 degrees. And you can also see the moon rising there. This is pretty close. I believe this was the day before the total lunar eclipse happened. So it's still very bright. Not the best for stargazing, but still a pretty view into itself, I think. Those clouds still coming over. Again, beautiful day overall. We always like to see those colors in the winter here in western Colorado. So what's happening next in our forecast? Again, we're drying out as we move into next week. Overall, I do expect after we get out of this active weather zone, for us to more see a calmer pattern. We're going to warm back up to around those 10 degrees above average into the 60s here in Grand Junction. So maybe not what all of us necessarily wanted to see. But in terms of active weather, still, we just got to get through Thursday night into Friday. So if you are happen to be watching this on the 5th or during the day on Friday, again, do know you're going to see those 40-mile-per-hour gusts that are going to be possible in the mountains. Do keep that in mind. That's going to make it very hard to go towards Vail Pass and Eisenhower Tunnel at times. And it's going to be calming down a little bit more once you get into the weekend. You're going to see highs in those 50s. It's going to be a great time to get outside. So if you have any suggestions for me, again, Kowalski at krextv.com. Always feel free to send me an email. I'll be happy to answer your weather questions here on the show and maybe feature some of your pictures too as we move into the next couple of days here. But overall, here at Western Colorado, we are moving to an active weather day or two, seeing that high country snowfall again. I think up towards the Grand Mesa, we're getting close to a foot. Going to be pretty active, working on that little moisture that we have left in the air as that cold front moves through the area and then cools down a whole lot more. But overall, it's going to be a nice couple of days here in Colorado. Once you get into Saturday and Sunday, you're going to see highs return to those 50s. Clear skies after that, really throughout much of next week. It's going to be a high pressure ridge. Once again, that means it's going to be warm outside. That means it's going to be very, very great for those outdoor activities. But we would love some more snowpack. We're still in that 60% zone, and we are getting towards the tail end of winter as we get into March. I know we're really crossing our fingers this year for kind of that second winter once we get into the spring. But right now, let's just focus on the moment here and say that we would like some more. We'd like a little bit more than what we're going to see over the next 7 days or so. So I'm very happy that you were able to tune in this week. We talked a lot about severe weather over towards the Panhandle region of Texas and Oklahoma. And then once we move to the next couple of days, again, going to calm down a whole lot. Personally, I'm happy to see any active weather at all. I know that makes my job a lot more interesting. But certainly for some of you, if you have travel plans on Friday, slowing down a lot, not necessarily what you want to see. So thank you all for watching this week for this episode of Weather Eye. And I hope to have you join for the next one.